approve the naming of the school in Cross Keys Cluster, presented by Mr. Marshall Orson.
Don't we want to take a recess now? No. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I might want to bring you up to date. We have three agenda items, and then we have the committee of the whole. Due to time, I have asked Dr. Green if abbreviating the two items under the committee of the whole would be appropriate. He said he could do that with no problem. So what we would do then to save time would be to cover these three items and then cover the two the two committee of the whole, and then we'll adjourn to executive session, and that will be our break. Okay, if that's okay with everybody. If it's not, then we just do it anyway.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Pursuant to Board Policy FDC, a naming committee was convened for the new elementary school that will initially be placed at the old International Student Center site on North Druid Hills. With the able assistance of Dr. Rebecca Jackson, we put together a committee that was comprised, is she hiding somewhere? I saw her earlier. We put together a committee that was comprised of some school-based representatives, including from Montclair Elementary, where the students will be coming from, as well as some adjacent elementary schools, including Briar Vista Elementary. We also had a couple central office personnel, including Dr. Jackson and Dr. Nunez. We had three parents from the student population that will be moving over, or expected to be moved over from Montclair, and we extended invitations to two people who lived in the community near or adjacent to the location of the new school, or at least a temporary location. Unfortunately, the last two were not able to participate fully, but we wanted to at least offer them the opportunity. Our purpose was to identify a name that we thought was appropriate for the school. We initially convened and discussed various ideas, but also decided that a critical piece of this was to get community input. As part of that process, we surveyed back in the Montclair community, which is what our own regulation emphasizes in terms of getting input. We sent flyers and had a web-based vehicle that was both in English and in Spanish for that population. And then names were generated, which the committee discussed and vetted. Through this process, there was a very strong agreement for the name I'm going to recommend. I have to share, I think, for this audience, because I think it's important. It's an important part of where we are in DeKalb, that we were, of course, very mindful of the population we were going to serve. This is going to be primarily a heavily Hispanic population. It's a population that I know in our other initiatives we were trying to address that I think we haven't fully served over our years, and we are clearly making an effort to ensure that this population is being treated in a way that is commensurate with their participation in the life of DeKalb County. And so we were mindful. This list had a variety of names from a variety of backgrounds, including some well-known Hispanic Americans. But there was a strong consensus, particularly from the parents who participated from that community, as well as we had a representative from the Latin American Association, Mr. David Schaefer, for naming the school for John Lewis. Clearly an American icon who, at a personal level, I believe transcends, whatever other issues in terms around politics or party identification. We were cognizant of the fact that our policy, though we have the ability to accept it, usually requires you to be dead before a building is named for you. That doesn't necessarily then get conveyed to the person being honored, and there are reasons for that, but we universally felt comfortable that the life of John Lewis was an impeccable life, and that this is an individual, if there is the type of individual we are going to honor while they're still alive and around to appreciate it, he exemplified the best of that. He is a person who, and I recognize, he is belongs to a particular political party in terms of in Congress, but he has been a bridge builder, for those of you who follow his career, across the aisle, particularly about bringing leaders from both parties to Selma on an annual pilgrimage there to really develop appreciation of what the civil rights movement was about. He is widely respected. I happen to have known John for a very long time, and he is just a great guy. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And I think he is a beloved figure. So I'm thrilled that our committee was able to come to consensus around the naming of this building. There was one addition we put on this, though, because we know that the initial facility is intended to be a temporary facility. And we didn't want the honor associated with the name of the building to then quickly expire, but because we, as appropriately, build a new building. And so the committee's strong recommendation, which is reflected in this recommendation, was that the name of the building move with the students to their permanent facility at the time in which we open it. So, Mr. Chairman, with great honor, I come before you to request that the Board of Education approve the naming of both the temporary facility on North Druid Hills and the permanent facility as it will be eventually designated in honor of John Lewis, and I guess it's the John Robert Lewis Elementary School. And I would request that the board approve this action.
Thank you, Mr. Orson. Is there any discussion? Dr.
See, that's what happens with delirium. We've been here for so long in Consagon. He don't know who I am, okay? This is going to be quick. I have no problem with Congressman John Lewis. I know the history. I know the story. Don't need to be reminded. But I was supposed to get a document that showed me that the parents and the community actually were the ones who promoted this and put this together. I never got that document. I never saw anything stating that they actually did. You have it? We have a copy of it. Okay, I would like to see a copy of it. Thank you. Because I want to make sure that, yeah, I'd like to have Mr. Lewis be head of many things and name things after, but I think that there has to be a buy-in and that we're not coming from the top and naming people and the parents and whether they're Hispanic or whoever they are, that they actually understand the validity and what that means and the ramifications of having such a prominent name on a school building.
Can I just respond to that? We had the three parents and Mr. Schaefer here, and unfortunately they had to leave because they were prepared to provide that. Right, and they were prepared to provide that confirmation for you, and the parents had to leave earlier, and Mr. Schaefer had to leave at 4:30, so unfortunately, best laid plans, but in response to that, we thought the in-person testimonials of these individuals would have been even more powerful in that regard.
For the benefit of the citizens, we do have a process in place to follow in naming any school, so they had to go through the process. Okay. No further discussion. Is there further? Mr. Jester, do you have a?
Yeah, and it's really not specific to this agenda item or the next agenda item, but just naming schools in general. And we seem to be getting kind of further off the tracks, and I'm concerned that we're potentially opening up a can of worms, no matter which side of the aisle we start, naming schools on. I just want to say that this is a dangerous can of worms that we're opening, that we're potentially alienating members of our community. And while the people that we have on this agenda here, or the next two agenda items, are definitely prominent figures, we're getting away from policy and regulation. I mean, I can understand not waiting 5 years until we name a school or name something after somebody, but we at least were waiting until they were dead, till they passed away, and that was mainly so that we could judge their history, judge their work as a lifetime. Not only currently are we not waiting until they've passed away, but we're talking about sitting politicians, and it's just, first of all, if we're going to start doing this regularly, I think we need to change the policy. It makes me uncomfortable breaking policy and regulation all the time like this. In the past, we've kind of bent it with the 5 years, but now we're breaking it. And I just want you to know it's a can of worms that I'm concerned about. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I say one
Ms.
thing? When you
sorry.
have a can of worms, you go ahead and use them to go fish and catch some other things. The bottom line comes down to is that we've got to begin to look at why do we have a problem with things, and if the politicians are not, they're great. And all schools, parks, and all the other memorials are named after great people. So I think that goes back to what Dr. Simpson was saying, it's a mindset. You know, most of what goes on in this country is a mindset of how we see people, how we think about people, how we look at people who are different from ourselves. But I think it's not so much a can of worms as it is that we've got to begin to look at making decisions. When Mr. Orson, who came to me with this, and I asked him questions, and that's what we all have had an opportunity to do. But I think that we've got to begin to look inside ourselves to see, why am I having a problem with it? Is it because the person doesn't look like me, doesn't think like me, or is there something else going on? So I don't want it to be that we're you know, discriminating against anyone, but the bottom line is a person is deserving no matter what color, race, creed, or color, wherever they live, sexual orientation, all of that, it should not matter.
No further discussion. Is there any opposition to placing? I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to be in opposition to not speak up later on.
Go ahead.
No. Thank you, Chair. To Dr. Morley's point, when I heard that we were thinking about in the community-supported John Lewis Elementary School, I, too, was supportive of the community's input and desire to have the facility named after him. Back to Dr. Morley's point about the community's input, my concern is at the next location for the school and that community. So I support the name for this elementary school. I feel it would be prudent for us to query the new community once the school is located in that community, where I'm not sure, do we have a definitive location for the new school? I don't know. But I support the naming of the school. I think that the next school should have input, the next community should have input on the name of the school. Thank you.
Can I just respond to that? So our policy is primarily written about the students who will be served. If you look at our policy, so it's not just the geographic location. So the students will be the same students who are going to be served. They're going to move with the building. So while I understand the sentiment about it, I don't actually agree that that sentiment complies with what the policy is actually. So I think the name and it's moving with the students is completely appropriate in this situation, given the design we have for the location of these students.
Mr. Jester?
So you're saying?
Finish, Mr.
Well, I was just going to ask, what school is it going to?
That's where I want to know.
Where
Where's this
is
going?
John Lewis Elementary School going to after the temporary location? Do we have clarity?
Currently, the expectation is that it will be located off Skyland Drive. That's part of the process that we're working through now. That's where the new elementary school we anticipate to be constructed.
And where would that elementary school feed into?
Make sure that we've already purchased the land before you answer that question.
Sure. Anticipate it. Let us close the deal, I believe, in January, and then we can certainly confirm that.
Don't answer the question. I'm sorry.
I'm going to go ahead and back up. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
So based on and I get it. So do we know the attendance zone for Skyland and where it'll feed into?
I don't think we have that answer at this point because we don't have a property currently that has been secured.
So to that point, I think it's a little premature, even though I support the name, I support the achievements of Dr. Lewis. I'm sure he's a doctor.
Not doctor.
With that being said, that's where I'm at.
I guess there's an elephant in.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Jester
I didn't see it.
and Ms. Turner and
Okay.
Dr. Marley.
I think I was next, right?
Jester
No,
was
I
next.
insist
and
ladies
then,
first.
Ms.
Yeah,
Turner.
ladies first. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I just want to say, I do believe that we need to look at our intention behind things. I think if we determine that a school should be named after a public servant who has, all of us know his history, and it's never been marred by scandal or anything. And I said that to Orson when he discussed it with me. That should follow wherever that school building is. It doesn't matter. Those children need to learn. I occupy a school that's named after a historical figure. Whether they're Hispanic students or Native American or African American or Caucasians, it doesn't matter. When my children went to a school, we went to the name of that school. And it didn't, that is not, I don't believe that's important. While I respect your comments, Mr. McMahon, I think we need to make decisions of conviction with integrity of heart, and we stand by that, and I believe that our constituents will respect that. I really do, unless there's some other intentions that we don't know about. And the final thing I want to say, I think to Mr. Jester's point, if I'm not mistaken, the policy with naming buildings or facilities, I think you mentioned it should be 5 years that they should be deceased, right? Okay, policy. But then I am conflicted because you and some constituents in your community presented to us, the board, to forego that policy. And we named the gymnasium after a notable employee of this district. And I was there for the naming, and I supported it. So in some instances, we want to forego it, and in others, we want to question. And I think we need to be very careful about that. And I understand, I hear what you're saying. Maybe it needs to be revised or looked at. But we need to keep in mind that if it's good for one, it should be across the board good. Okay? Thank you.
Dr. Marley?
I don't want to belabor the point because I'm getting a headache. I think there's an elephant in the room. And, you know, we're educators, we're adults, and at some point you have to address it. And I heard Jim's comment. We need to make sure where it's going, what community it's going to be in. Is it going to be an African-American community, a Hispanic community? Will it be identifying with whomever? The building is an edifice. It's what takes place in that building that makes a difference, and not necessarily the name. The name should be synonymous of a person who has achieved greatness. This man has achieved some of the ultimate greatness. At 80-something years old, he's still out there trying to pull everybody together. This man has been beaten down, watered down with hoses, bitten by dogs, gone to jail for things he shouldn't do, so that all of us could be free, not just a certain group of people, for all of us to be able to come together. And when we begin to question, should a person be dead? Give people their flowers while they're living. Let him be able to celebrate this. I asked Marshall when he came to me, I said, has the community? And he gave me his promise that they had. So I'm trusting him. I don't think that whatever intentions are out there, as long as it's not someone, a criminal or somebody out there who's done some unethical type things, and I don't think that he would come with something like that. But again, it's a mindset we have to begin to look in our hearts. Why do we ask certain questions, and why do we still want to have certain people not be in certain areas to be indicative of the greatness? Because it shouldn't matter. When we can go beyond who people are, how they look, and deal with the reality, what's going to take place, that all people will come in that school and be proud for their children to be there. That's what we've got to get to. I think a lot of what's going on in this country is in individuals right here, and we are bored, and we have difficulty. So I just want to say I would like to see us at some point come together.
Thank you, Dr. Marley, for, hey, look, you saw my finger.
Yeah, I'm finished.
Mr. Jester, I'm sorry.
So I definitely respect and can appreciate when a community comes together and picks the name of a school. I am all behind that. And to Mr. Orson's point, if I read this correctly, the committee met twice, once in May and once in June, to vet each name suggested by the community, right, Mr. Orson? Microphone?
Yes.
Right. And that committee listed right under the summary, right?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so to what Ms. Turner was saying, you know, this 5-year rule, that was a bend, but this agenda item breaks just about every rule we have under naming schools. So they met twice. The rules say they have to meet at least 3 times. I realize that's small, but nevertheless. So it says there must be at least 11 members from the community. There's only 10 members from the community. Was there a community ballot?
No, we did a community survey.
Community survey. And was the community that this new school is going to, were they involved in this?
No.
Right.
Well, I can't say. They may have participated or not, because it was a system that was anonymous, so they very well could have participated.
Right. So you mentioned that the committee consisted of Montclair and Briar Vista. That's everything east.
No, I can't remember the other. There was at least one other school-based representative on there. Let me see if I can. Principal from Woodward Elementary School was part of it, as well as.
No, I'm talking about parents.
No, the parents were from the Montclair community.
Right. It seems like if the school
I think
is going
west,
to be.
if I understand my geography.
Right. If the school is going to be in Brookhaven, west of Peachtree Industrial, that there should be community members from Brookhaven and at least some sort of form. And the thing is, we don't know for sure where it's going to be. Furthermore, there's a regulation that it says this ballot must be sent to the feeder of all the affected schools, and that principal is supposed to send it to all the students so that everybody affected knows what's going on. I guarantee you nobody from Brookhaven going to Skyland knows that it's going to happen.
Well, so, you know, you're on a sort of timetable. We sent it to the Montclair community primarily. It may have also
Wait,
gone to
we're not on a
gone to Woodward.
timetable.
No, no, no,
Skyland
no,
isn't
no,
open
hold
for
on,
5 years.
Hold on. Because, and I appreciate you probably have some people who have expressed opposition to this. It's a very legalistic reading, but as our chief legal officer can tell you, one, to some of the points you made about whether we've broken the rules, we have a safe harbor within this policy, which allows for the board to bypass it. And we also have a safe harbor within our overall policies. And that, what you're reciting is an administrative regulation, not board policy. Board policy supersedes administrative regulation. Decisions of the board supersede administrative regulation. So I appreciate the detail of what you're going through, but it's not actually directly relevant because the ultimate decision, even to the constitution of the committee and its existence, exists only in an advisory capacity to the Board of Education, which retains the final authority on making this decision, whether or not we ever even had a committee that was constituted. I will say, and I've got an email here from Mr. David Schaefer who was very involved in making sure the community was surveyed, that people were asked about what they wanted, and that he wanted to point out, for the benefit of those, that the Latin American Association is actually located inside the city of Brookhaven, in case people were wondering. And I can only speak for myself, I'm very comfortable as whether or not this process was perfect or imperfect with where we got to. And I'm extremely comfortable with honoring who I believe is an American icon without regard to the location of the building. And I do think there's a point in which we should be careful but also introspective. This is an American who I think the location of the building would be appropriate anywhere. And so whether the ultimate location ends up at Skyland or some other place in which our great facilities and planning people figure out where to put it, I still think the name and the designation and the honor is appropriate, and that's really the essence of the recommendation for which I am standing here before the group, on behalf of the group of people who served on this committee.
Since we obviously will have this as an action item tonight, instead of debating it twice, and I would go up on the wishes of the board, but since rather than debate it twice, wait to debate it tonight. Is that agreeable with everybody? Okay. Fair enough.